highway was too crowded.
We're between I-95 to the south going to Florida, and I-26 between
95. Correct?
It helped us.
I've been
We
living
helped
there
them.
almost all my life.
It's a nice
Blacks didn't have problems.
In fact, I like saying this one.
But you get farming in you, it's something hard not to do.
Everybody had a picture. Living was absolutely wonderful in Clarence County.
People ask people that question, if you could live anywhere in the world you wanted to live and you had all the money to do it, where would you live? And I can never think of any place else.
I think time is it's like the little crossroads grocery store and service station there. It's gone by the wayside.
Having a voice for people here will make a difference.
Again, guess what we cooked Saturday night? No, Sunday night, Sunday night. Rick done stayed Sunday. He said, let's fry some spank. You know what? We got out 2 cans of spank, but they're about $9. We sliced it, fried it real good and crispy. We made sandwiches out of it. It was good. This is the gossip table, news table.
Once you retire, you come here. We always jump in here, doing what we do a lot of hunting and fishing, and well, we always had to work for a living at one time. We used to know everybody here almost. Now it's a little bit different now. But we still know a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know.
But just a small town. Anyway, it's just a small town, just like anywhere you hear it on TV. Small town. A small town.
They rolled the sidewalk up here at 6 o'clock. It took up.
The only nightlife we got, we sit around the fire and drink a little moonshine. Yeah, I mean, when we dated back in high school, there was no theater, you know. We would cut town all night long. We'd go from a little burger place up here to a burger place down here. Just cutting town all night long, gang up, talk, you know. Like
We had
that.
one theater here, yeah, I can remember.
And it stayed closed half the time, open and closed. It's the same theater my daddy used to ride a horse 12 miles on Saturday afternoon. He'd hitch the horse. This is in the, what, 40s?
40 and 50.
Yeah, he would hitch the horse, meet a girl, theater would be over, I mean, the show would be over, he'd get back on his horse and ride it 12 miles back to home. And that wasn't long ago. But it's kind of like what you see in some movies sometimes. You could really make a movie out of some of this stuff.
I was born here in 1954. My grandparents, my great-grandparents, my maternal and my paternal side of the family are from here. And then my parents divorced when I was a young child, and I moved to Florida with my mother. And in 1997, I came back to the area. My dad had remarried, and his wife had passed away. And he needed some assistance in his care. That's what brought me back to Manning. Never in my wildest dreams would I've ever agreed or thought that I'd have been back here. Never. Manning is a very small town. It's the smallest place I've ever lived. I think it would have been hard wherever I would have relocated. I came back and I was 43 years old, and I'm not married and I don't have children, and so it's amazing to me how many people marry and never travel anywhere else. Maybe they'll go to USC or Clemson or somewhere, but there are a lot of locals that marry into locals. And most of my relatives, I have a number that went to college, but I can't really think of too many that did not come back to this area. And a lot sooner than I did. My grandparents lived right next door to my aunt and uncle, and they had 13 children. They had some that were my daddy's age and some that were my age. And my dad used to plant 5 acres of tomatoes. And so we would go out in the field and pick tomatoes, and then we would come in and sit under the sheds and grade tomatoes. And then Daddy and I would get in the truck and we'd go to the farmer's market in Columbia and go to the movies. That was probably a real treat. A lot of our activities were church related and little functions and getting together and peanut boiling and watermelon cutting and all those sorts of things when I was young.
I've been living here almost all my life, 3/10 of a mile outside of Bowman. So I was always an outsider. So when I built this, I still became an outsider. And I developed the UFO Welcome Center to welcome the aliens from other planets. And so far, I think it might have been successful. I have no idea how I built it. You know, like, build it, they would come. But honestly, I just started on it one day and it became that. Actually, for 30 days, I didn't tell anybody what it was because I didn't know what it was anyway. And finally, one person figured out it was going to be a ship. I said, no, it ain't a boat. He meant spaceship. I'm going, yeah, you're right, could be. But, and I had to build a second one up top after I saw my first UFOs. And I actually was coming from work 2:30 in the morning, and I turned a street, and I said to myself, you know, nobody else in the car, I got 2 moons in the sky. Oh no, one's moving, and it was coming for me. So I let it cross my path, and then I got back in the car because I actually got out waiting for a crash or something. Then I came on down to this road up here, right in front, and there it was again. I said, wow, they want to really talk to me now. So I headed on out and got up to the UFO, and that's all you're going to hear.
My name is Claudette Sarah Pauling, Pauling. I was born in this area in 1936, right behind the Baptist Church on Carroll Street. Now, my granddaddy came to this area in 1893. He came from what you would call the big field, which is the country part of Ellery. I went to school here. I went to one school, Orangeburg County Training School, which was the first high school in the county. At that time, they called us Negroes, and we were known as colored people. And I went to one school, Orangeburg County Training School, from primer grade through 12th. I graduated from high school in 1954. And then I went to Claflin, which is in Orangeburg, which is 21 miles from here. I graduated from there in 1959. I retired in 1995. In 1993, this little house was up for sale. My mother, as I said, my mother used to work in it. I bought the house. I didn't retire until 95. But I bought the house, I started buying the house in 93. And I became the matriarch of my family. It became, what you would say, it became more like the house for the family. It's really, well, it's not never too many people because I love my family.
People are, you know, they're very comfortable and they're very settled, and, you know, my cousins will say all the time, well, don't you know so-and-so, and, you know, oh, so-and-so died, you know, are you going to the funeral, you know, and I have no clue who they are. You know, I'm like, no. Along with that, coming back, it's been very difficult. People marry people here and they already have their relationships established, and what do they need me for? When you don't have your own family unit, I think wherever you are, it's just really different, you know. It is what it is, I guess.
I don't really hang out in Bowman too much. Bowman's a small, quiet town. Everybody keeps to themselves. And the Bowman people, they haven't really even visited here yet. Yeah, they've been leaving it all to the tourists. Some of them might trap the tourists somewhere going, okay, what was it all about? You haven't been? No. I think they actually scared to go in. My neighbors are kind of closed in like everybody else, yeah. So yeah. As long as everybody stay at their house and I stay at mine, I'm okay.
I will be 81 years old next month. And so I've had quite a long life in Clarendon County, in the fields, the woods, and the small towns. Living was absolutely wonderful in Clarendon County in the 40s and the 50s. And then we began to be urbanized or whatever. Things changed somewhat. But my grandfather would grab me when I was 5 or 6 years old, and and we would go fishing. And we didn't have far to go back then. On his farm area, there was a little stream on there, and we would go in that. I would tell my mother and father that I'm going to stay with Grandpa and Grandma, and I would walk half a mile to their house and spend a few days with them. And that's home. Home is where you go to your neighbor next door and say, I hear you've got a problem, Mick, is there any way I can help you? Or you go to your neighbor 6 doors down or a mile down. We knew everyone. We were kin to most people. And that, I reckon that's my idea of home.
At that time, you were colored, and I love being colored. I don't like being black. You know, I grew up under segregation. And we grew up under segregation. And the town is still, well, in fact, I like segregation better than I like it now. Because we had our own school, we had our own, we still have our own churches, and we had our own businesses. And even the small white people now cannot, like the mama and papa stores cannot keep up with the big stores now.
My uncle owned a farm, and he had this family of McCants, and they shared the farm with him. They worked with him, and he shared the profit made from the farm with him. And they had a son my age. His name was John. And John and I would work in the tobacco fields, and we would sleep in the tobacco, and we were extreme friends. And it's a long story dealing with John, but I don't know, you couldn't find a greater friendship, which was proven 1998 or so. I became mayor of the city of Manning in 1996, and we were at a municipal convention, my wife and I, at Hilton Head. And we were in a waiting line at a restaurant. And I looked across the room. There was John and his wife. We hadn't seen each other for 50 years thereabouts. And such a reunion, you can't imagine. I mean, here we are in a group of other politicians or mayors or whatever of cities, and we stand in the middle of this group and cry. From that time on, John and I communicate at least every 2 weeks, and we visit one another. And our friendship was continued once we met in that restaurant at Hilton Head. And if there was ever a story of black and white friendship, then that's one.
He asked me once to marry him, but my daddy didn't want me to marry a white man, so I didn't marry him. But we were friends until he died. We were friends until he died. See right there? And that's why I don't have a heart no more. My heart was buried with him. This was my floral arrangement. I had it made in the shape of a heart. And it was so, that's why I don't have a heart anymore. I'm like the Tin Man. Was the Tin Man didn't have the heart? And I was lucky to have a friend like him.
We had black people that helped us farm. And my daddy was in the hospital and had an operation when I was around 15 years old, and it's come time to gather tobacco. Well, Trusty and Clara was a great black couple. They helped us. We helped them. It was just a great situation.
Well, you know, the N-word, people don't like to use the N-word, but that was common. They would say, who nigger you? And they said, when they say who nigger you, that means who you work for. There were people like the people that had this house, the Halls. They were very good people. There were people, and that during segregation, there was like, whites would look out for their people who worked for them. Now you're on your own. Now you're on your own. But they would look out for their people.
In our community, in our Gable Sardinia community, and the 40s and the 50s and so forth, we didn't have problems. The blacks didn't have problems with us, and we didn't have problems with the black. We lived together, and we enjoyed each other, and we looked out for one another as well. And I wish that perhaps, we could take an example of that life and transplant it now to 2016 and say, this is the way we were, this is the way we should be. And I wish, but there's no way to do that nowadays.
You got some Marion tomatoes in the 6-packs?
I don't think I got some Marion, I'll check. And I know I don't have bell pepper in the 6-pack, but I've got some in the cups.
That's what I need is 6, But I reckon I'll have to try some. I mean, the cayenne.
We got cayenne in the packs, and jalapeno, and some yellow bell.
But you got tomatoes in 6-packs.
Got lots of different tomatoes, different varieties. I don't know if I got the Marion or not. I don't think so, but I'll check.
Okay.
I'll put it together for you.
All right, do what you can out there on there.
Okay, I will.
All right. I've lived here all my life, right in Clarendon County. Matter of fact, I live just on the same property where I was raised at. I live on the farm out there. I farm and run this feed store and different other little things, car wash and stuff like that. I mean, I have farmed all of my life. I had my first tobacco when I was 14 years old, my mother and I. And I rented my first farm when I was 16 years old and bought my first tractor at 18 years old. It was a lot of work. A lot of work. And once you get farming in you, it's something hard not to do.
But when I was 10 years old, I was cropping tobacco, doing a man's job at 10, really. I mean, everybody had to pitch in, you know, when you're little. And I was watching my kids one day. They were about the same age I was, running around the yard playing. And I said, you know, they the same age I was when I was doing a man's job. I said, I wonder if they could actually do that. I couldn't see them doing that, like, you know. And Paul's the same way. He worked when he was 10 years old too. But they come up different, man. You don't have to work now until you get, you know, in high school and college.
Oh, how I had to get down and pick that cotton. Yes, I did. I think I might have been about 9 or 10 years old. I have no idea how in the world I taught my grandfather into taking me out to the cotton fields. Yeah, gave me the bag. I missed a lot of cotton too. Had a lot of help out there, but yeah, by the time I got about halfway down my row, I kept seeing the other guys coming back and helping me pick the rest of the row. I'm going, well, good. Cotton picker. Yeah, that came up around, 64, I think. Yeah. One of my dad's good friends had a cotton picker, and he ran my dad's land one day, you know, picking the cotton, and we going, huh, we're all over the job, y'all. You know.
During the time that I grew up, this really was a agriculture area, and we would call it King Cotton. Cotton was the #1 industry, and we had, you know, we picked cotton. I like picking cotton. If some people didn't like it, but I like picking cotton because, well, first place, my father wasn't a farmer. See, if my father was a farmer, that would mean that I would really have to work hard. But my father wasn't a farmer. My father worked at the veneer mill. My father always, he never made no more than minimum wages. He sent all 3 of his girls to school. When I went to college, my daddy was making only $40 a week.
You're the biggest gambler in the world, but you have more faith than most people that it's going to be all right. Rain's going to come, it's going to warm up, crops are going to make, but you get disappointed many a times. It's like this past year with the flood. Started out with a drought the first of the year, crops burning up, and then what crops were made, lost them because of the flood. It's so unpredictable. You have no control over it. God has control over it, and then other people have the control of what something sells for and what you get for it. A farmer, he buys retail and he sells wholesale all his life. He takes what he can get.
Land was worth very little here. It was all farmland. We were an agricultural community completely. When this big highway came through, they started paying farmers 5, 6, 7, 10 times the value of the land as farmland. You either voluntarily signed a paper and got your money, or you went to one of the local lawyers who took your case to court, and a jury of 12 people sat there and determined the value of your land. Of course, the road may have already been built because they condemned it, eminent domain. They took it. But there was it put so many struggling farmers really with money in the bank, because they sold a $100 piece of acre land for $1,000. And then you had the interchanges. And those people that owned the land around the interchange really got big money for selling, because people were following, investors were following the road down. All the changes, and it's not bad, but you know, it used to be your Hardys was owned by a local person, and you knew them, and they had an interest in the community, and they would give to community causes, where it's hard to find Mr. Hardy. And it's very difficult to find Mr. McDonald.
That's always been a pretty busy place.
But with 95,
95 killed.
when the traffic came through this town, all the little motels, there was motels everywhere. But when 95 opened up, the little small motels and stuff, they died out. I think it was 1968 it started cutting the right of way through. And every time they would open 95 up, it would be an exit they got off of and got back on 301. They opened up in stages. And everybody followed 95, opened up a store right at the exit, But I even got a job one summer working on 95. I worked 2 days and they found out I wasn't 18 and told me I couldn't come back.
Listen, 301 was the main north-south artery route on the East Coast. And I remember when I was a kid, we would walk to school, and we would walk right down the middle of Highway 301. But again, that was in the 1940, 41. And you know, we'd see a car occasionally with an out-of-state tag on it, and it would be amazing. But as traffic built up, we couldn't walk in the middle of the Highway 301 to school. We would have traffic on holidays back up for 5 miles, generally on one side of the city of the next, because the travelers, the tourists, they were either going north or south. They never did reach a happy medium and go both ways at the same time, but generally, they would, prior to the seasons or the holidays, they would head south, and after the holidays, they would head north. So one month it was backing up on the south side of town, the next month it was backing up on the north side of town.
We're between I-95 to the south going to Florida, and I-26 between Charleston and Columbia, and a lot of times there's a wreck or so between 95 and 26, so a lot of people take Homestead Road, which is Bowman Road, and come right by here, and you should have seen all them cameras pop up out of the window. They just like taking a picture and keep on going. Some do stop, but I probably already had maybe 2 million people stop by now. Tourists are cool. Yeah, I like tourists. Yeah. See, actually, when I built it in '94, around '97 or so, the Japanese, or Japanese? I think it might have been Japanese. They sent a representative from New York down and interviewed me, and it went across the whole globe. Even over in foreign countries, there I was. I'm going, golly, they actually like this stuff on TV? Nah. But yeah, it went across the globe in, I think it's 96 or 97.
As far as the tourists, every now and then you might get somebody that comes off one of the intersections and come through town, a few people, but no. I live about 4 miles out of town on 301, when 301 was the road. And at spring break, the cars, I could tell when the stoplight changed in Manning, they would be backed up almost 4 miles out in the country. But there was oodles of restaurants. There was Manning Restaurant, Manning Motel number 2. Matter of fact, I worked at Manning Restaurant, the service station part of it, when I was in high school pumping gas and stuff.
My father ran a service station on the corner a couple blocks from here for 50 years. And I worked at that station from 10 years old on. In fact, my instructions as I grew up, Johnny, you can do anything you want to. You can play sports, you can go hunting, you can go fishing, otherwise be at the station. And so that's the way I grew up, at the station, changing tires, changing oil and automobiles. That's back when the service station was truly a service station. We washed the windows, put air in the tires, put water in the radiator, washed the windshield, just did everything and charged the customer. You know, the customer paid at the end of the month. As far as the farmers were concerned, they paid in the fall, one time a year.
Then I-95 came. I suspect I-95 began in the 70s here, maybe, or maybe a little later, but it was treacherous. The highway was too crowded, it was dangerous, and, you know, we would blame the Yankees for speeding all the time, and perhaps they did. It was being built from the north-south, as I remember, and imagine Florence, 45 miles away. I-95 would feed traffic from New York City to Florence, and then it would bottleneck. And then eventually they extended I-95 to Sardinia, South Carolina. And then they bypassed Manning. And then Summerton was left out. And then when Summerton got left out, Summerton was a mecca of motels and such. It was, you know, Summerton had 4 or 5 very nice motels. And now Summerton is bypassed by this traffic, and of course Manning was too. But the little town of Santee, for an example, it sprung, it grew overnight almost. And then when they built the new bridge across the Santee River, connecting Clarendon County and Orangeburg County, then that really spelled doom for any tourist business that Manning or Summerton depended on. And all of a sudden, Manning, traffic dries up, Summerton traffic dries up, even the little village of Sardinia, where I was raised, dried up. Here's 301 now, it's back to where it was in the early 40s, no traffic.
The six lane interstates frighten us country people. We can't stand it. I like dirt roads and the blacktop roads. You know?
We live a laid-back life. I mean, you know, hunt some and fish some, and it's nothing. And we got a pretty good bit of freedom in some way. And, but it changed a lot in the last 20 years, too.
We have a sign on the south side of town and a sign on the north town. Welcome to Manning, SC. It was put there in about 1935 or 36. Matchless Manning, matchless for beauty and hospitality. And, you know, I tend to agree with that. I really do. It was much more predominant then, maybe, than it is now. But times change. And Manning has done a pretty good job of adapting to those changes. And I hope the changes are slowing down a little bit, you know.